Have you always known that you're on a soul path? And have you wondered how to gain real insight into the steps along your own unique journey? Welcome everyone, I'm Sarah Main, and thank you for joining me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. It's great to have you join me. Damayanti means deep peace and calm. Damayanti sheds a light for your soul through the gift of wisdom that shines in the beautiful and universal language of Sanskrit. Damayanti is the show that speaks to your soul, connects with your soul, and enriches your soul. Hey everyone, welcome along. This is Damayanti, the show for your soul, and I'm Sarah, and it's great to have you here and listening. And today's show is the stories we tell ourselves. This is so important. Our lives are self-created by the stories we tell ourselves. So here's a story. Where do the stories come from? All the stories that we tell ourselves. Where do they come from? Here's a story. There was a professor, a really educated, learned, well-respected, successful professor. And he goes to a Zen master. And the Zen master is living very simply. And he said, I'm here to learn all that you can teach me. Teach me the wisdom, the higher wisdom. I can learn this. And he then spends the next 5 or 10 minutes explaining everything he already knows. And the Zen master just listens quietly. And then the Zen master goes into the kitchen and prepares some tea and brings it back out and sets it in front of the professor. And whilst the professor's talking and telling the master about himself, he starts pouring tea, and the cup gets fuller and fuller, and then it reaches the top, and the Zen master just keeps pouring tea into the cup, and the cup just overflows, and it starts overflowing onto the tray and then the table and then onto the floor. And in the end, and he just keeps pouring tea slowly and carefully. And in the end, the professor says, what on earth are you doing? Stop. And the Zen master says, you're like that cup. Nothing more can fit into it. So until you empty your cup, empty yourself of everything, you won't be able to learn the higher wisdom. You need to empty your cup. So what does this story mean? One meaning is the professor obviously needed to empty his mind and, basically be receptive to whatever the master had to teach. But what did he have to empty himself of? Obviously it's preconceptions and filters and expectations and judgments and lots of all the learning he's done. But also, how about emptying of the feelings of pride, of fear, of shame, of knowing, all those sorts of feelings? So let's just take one filter, one form of filter that we all share, and that the wise invite us to free ourselves of. And that's what I like to call, this filter is the stories that we tell ourselves. This is a filter. The stories that we tell ourselves. So here's a story. This is a very beautiful story. There are 2 birds. Imagine a tree. It's a beautiful tree. And the leaves are out and it's providing beautiful shade, and it's abundant with fruit and flowers. And on the branch of that tree are 2 birds. And one bird is pecking away, completely absorbed at pecking away at the fruit. And the other bird is just simply watching, looking around, not just at the bird pecking, but looking around and just watching. So that story is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So it's a very ancient story, very profound, like the story from the overflowing teacup. So the 2 birds, one pecking the fruit, completely absorbed in pecking the fruit and enjoying all the taste, presumably, and getting filled and all of that. And the other bird is just simply watching. So let's consider the bird that's pecking at the fruit. This bird is us, or at least the us we're familiar with. The other witnessing bird, it's there and it's always with us, but it's not often that we connect with the witnessing bird in our usual day-to-day experience. So the fruit that the bird is pecking at are all the thoughts and the feelings and the experiences. That's what the fruit represents. All those thoughts and feelings, experiences, the stories, basically, that it's choosing to peck at. So there's a selection process. It's pecking at some and not at others. And then it may go back to those others, possibly, or stick with just a few that it's chosen to peck at. All right, so there's a selection process. And that's important to note because you can skip over that little bit. And remember, the story talks about birds, so it's only pecking. It's not like it's eating everything in one bite, totally all gone. It's peck, peck, peck at this, a little bit at that, a little bit at this, a little bit at that. So it's jumping around even the one piece of fruit or several pieces of fruit. Get the image. It's important. But there's fruit that it doesn't peck at, and that's equally important. What thoughts, feelings, and experiences do we hold on to, we cling to, we peck at, all right? And what thoughts, feelings, experiences, and stories do we shrink from, that we try to avoid? So let's focus in on this point. Let's consider, by looking at the stories that we tell ourselves, which are made up of the fruits that we have selected to peck at, okay? These are things we've chosen for whatever reason to stick at, to think about, to retell again and again and again, to peck at as our attention flits around. All right? So remember, the fruit in the story represents all the thoughts, the feelings, experiences, the stories, the events, the objects in the manifest universe, both internal and external, because these make up the manifest universe. It's not just what we see with our physical eyes and hear with our physical ears. And clearly, we pick some and we reject others. So by doing this, we're saying yes to some and no to others, all right? So what I'm building up here is, how do we create the stories that we tell ourselves all the time? Where do they come from? This is where they come from. It's from this selection process. And mostly it seems it's an unconscious selection process, but a selection process nevertheless, because some people have one type of story and I have another type of story and you'll have your own stories. So we've all selected from the sort of universal banquet of experiences, possible experiences. We've all created these stories. This is where they come from. So we're saying yes to some things and no to others. And that's a very individual thing. And this becomes the subject matter of the stories that we tell ourselves. Okay? So notice that the story talks about the bird pecking. All right, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And pecking is an act of eating. All right, and when we eat, we ingest and we assimilate. So you are what you eat, and we assimilate at every level: physical, mental, emotional. So this creates the level of consciousness through which we experience everything and where we live and dwell and inhabit. This creates our world. So this is where these stories come from. And often these are the stories we're telling ourselves. Here's an example. There's a person, and this person's highly accomplished. Right? This is a contemporary example. This person is highly accomplished, very hardworking, and very effective, really good at what they do. But whenever they were praised for the work that they did. And believe you me, that work was really well deserved because they were so accomplished. They were so hardworking. They were so loyal. They were so dedicated and effective. But whenever they were praised for that work, they reacted negatively and dismissively. Interesting, hey? Well, their boss one day, their boss had noticed this, and their boss had said to me, actually, I really want to praise this person. This person's amazing, like so effective. I really want to praise, but every time this person comes back dismissively. So one day the boss just asked why she did this. It was obviously a moment where they were having a conversation, and it was a situation where she was open, and he asked why they did this. And this person said, because you don't mean it. All right. Now, the boss did mean it, but it was interesting because that was indicative of the filter that that person has, that whatever praise anyone gave, you didn't mean it. I'm happy to say that this person later on changed that behaviour. So it's obviously working on changing that. But clearly there was some sort of filter, some kind of story that led this person to reject genuine praise, found it hard to accept. It's hard to say why and what. That's up to the person to know about that. That's their work. And that's what inner work on yourself is all about. But it was interesting to note, and often it's easier to see in another person, and we can learn from that we all have these filters. Where do these stories come from? Well, they come from us. Go back to the birds on the tree, pecking, saying yes to some, no to others, and forming through thoughts and experiences and events and whatnot, forming a story and an image of ourselves as a result. So think now, what is the general theme of the stories that we tell ourselves? It'll be different for everyone. But there's often some general themes like, I'm a failure. I'm missing out. I'm wonderful. Oof, I'm so wonderful. I'm better than those people and not as good as these. I'm ugly. I'm unworthy. I'm unlucky. So let's stop and consider that. So I'm going to take a break now, and after the break, let's go on and consider the effect of these repetitive themes of these stories and how we can free ourselves and get out of this. All right, so think about the general themes of the stories that we tell ourselves, and I'll be back after the break to consider what the effect of repeating these negative themes is. All right, so I'll see you soon, back soon. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Damayanti, the show for your soul. And today's show is on the stories we tell ourselves. And before we went to break, I was talking about thinking about the general themes of the stories we tell ourselves, and they can often be quite negative, like I'm a failure, I'm missing out, or I'm wonderful, which, is probably better than the negative ones. I'm better than those people and not as good as these. I'm ugly, I'm unworthy, I'm unlucky. You can write your own list. So let's just take these themes. So what is the effect of the repetitive themes of these stories? Because they're rattling around in our heads, in our minds a lot, right? We're living in these stories. Well, I just wanted to remind you, excuse me, I just wanted to remind you, very important bit of data. Got a frog. from some studies from the National Science Foundation that the average person, adult, thinks 60,000 thoughts per day, 60,000 thoughts per day. Let that number sink in. 80% of that 60,000 are negative. Okay, this is data from the National Science Foundation. And of those 80% that are negative, 95% of them are repetitive thoughts. So if we repeat those negative thoughts, we think negative way more than we ever think positive thoughts each day, unless we're consciously choosing the thoughts that are in the mind, or we're consciously choosing to stay present and allow the thoughts to come and go. All right? So it's really important to remember that, because I just talked about the effect of these repetitive themes of the stories. Just remember that. So what is the effect of these stories? What is the effect of these negatively themed stories? What do they do to us and to the people around us? Yeah. Short answer is they act as a two-way filter for our experience of the world. They filter what we see and hear that's coming in, so to speak, and they filter what we say and do coming out. All right? So there's filtering happening. And this filtering is being filtered by often, unless we're consciously present, through these negatively themed stories. Okay? Here's a story. This is the short version. I've told this on previous shows, but there are two sages that are meditating under a tamarind tree. And a tamarind tree is a large tree, and it has thousands upon thousands upon thousands of tiny little leaves. All right. And these two sages are meditating. They're under different trees, right? And Vishnu, the god, sends Narada, his servant, with answers to these sages' questions. This is the short version. And it was how long until they're enlightened and become one with the supreme, with the divine? That was their question. And they were given the opportunity to ask the Lord Vishnu. And the first sage, Narada comes back with an answer from the Lord Vishnu, and the first sage, he's told that he will be enlightened after he has meditated for as many years as the number of pieces of fruit in his fruit bowl in front of him. And there happen to be 3 mangoes in the fruit bowl. So that's the answer: for as many years as the number of pieces of fruit in his fruit bowl, which happened to be 3 mangoes. He only had to meditate for that length of time, and then he would be enlightened. So that sage responds with despondency and misery and burden, and oh God, that is such a long time. Oh my God, what a burden. He was so despondent. The second sage is given the answer that he will achieve enlightenment and become one with the Supreme, the Divine, after he has meditated for as many years as the number of leaves on the tamarind tree that he's sitting under. And remember, tamarind trees have literally thousands of leaves. So this sage is delivered this news that he has to meditate for as many years as the number of leaves on this tamarind tree. And this sage jumps up with bliss and joy and gratitude and appreciation, and he's dancing and singing because he has received a direct message from his Lord that he's so devoted to, this God. And he is blessed to receive such a personal message. Right? And he feels so grateful and so blissful that he's actually received a personal message. So get the 2 responses. 3 mangoes, oh God, that's so long. 3, as many years as the number of pieces of fruit. in the bowl, which is 3 mangoes, and the other guy meditating for as long as the number of leaves on the tree, right, which is thousands. And he's ecstatic, right, that he gets this personal message. So the Lord Vishnu comes immediately to the one who is in bliss and carries him away to heaven, the divine realm, in that instant, because he is so grateful and happy and in bliss, and has no barriers and filters within him, that the Lord has to come and immediately carry him away to heaven, which is what he wanted. So this story is showing effectively the same event, right? But it's seen through 2 different filters, 2 different stories, 2 different experiences, 2 different outcomes. Okay? 2 different outcomes. One is left having to meditate, and the other is carried away. It's like the universe just turned around and said, okay, here you go, if this is what you truly want. So this is really, really important to get that these stories do govern our experiences. All right. There's another story, the story of the banquet and the bamboo jackets. Imagine this palace with 2 separate rooms, 2 banquet halls, and you can enter one through one door and one through another. And this person opens one door, and all these people, there's these hundreds of people in front of this magnificent banquet with everything you could possibly want. The one catch is they're all in these bamboo jackets, and they're in complete misery because they can't bend their arms to actually lift the food and the drink to their mouths and enjoy it. And so he goes into the other room, and it's an exact copy of the banquet, the hundreds of people having, but they're having a wonderful time. They're in the bamboo jackets, but this time they figured out that if you feed someone else, if you feed each other, because they can't bend to lift to their own mouth, if you feed each other, quit. So they learnt by service and looking after others, and working together, all those themes, you can have a blissful, wonderful time and enjoy the banquet of life. So that story also illustrates same scenario, different story, different filter, different outcome, different experience. All right. And these are really, really important stories, and they're old, ancient, traditional stories there to teach us exactly about these filters that we have. And they do affect our life experience. So to wrap up, what is the effect of these stories we tell ourselves? Are they healthy or unhealthy? Are they creative or destructive? The stories are creative. These stories create. They will definitely have an effect, and they will create the world in which we live. So for any change to take place, we need to be vigilant about the stories we tell ourselves. And if the stories are negative and create a world of darkness and misery, we need to find a practical, effective way of changing the story. So how do we do this? Like there was one person, and he had a very negative background and decided to turn life around. And the key part of that was telling himself that he was in control, he was strong, he was creative, he was loved and loving, he was worthy. In other words, started telling himself a different story, and he completely turned his life around. And what about the other bird in the tree that was simply watching? What about the professor in the tea ceremony? He wasn't told to change his story. He wasn't told to substitute a good story for a bad story. He was told to empty himself of all stories. So that witnessing bird and that emptying ourselves of all stories, that is a story for another day. But for now, let's tell ourselves a new story. We might need to fake it till we make it. We might need to assume a virtue, though we have it not. But remember to create a new habit 12 to 15 times a day for 28 days, and you need some form of reminder. And no effort to remember, to make this effort, is ever lost. That's from the Bhagavad Gita. So we need energetic reminders, and I'm wearing one at the moment. It says Satya, truth. All right. And if you go to my website, damayanti.store, my website, you'll find beautiful products like this, and they are energetic memory aids. They're memory supports. They're energetic reminders. They're good company to keep with you. And wearing jewelry is so personal, I think. So go to my website, damayanti.store, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and my show's on YouTube. And I've also got an Etsy store, All Things Eternal shop. And there's great merch there, again, with energetic reminders to change your story so you have an uplifting, positive, energetic, life-affirming story, and that you can live your best self. But to do that, we need some support and good company. So that's what my Etsy store, All Things Eternal shop, cool name, hey? All Things Eternal shop is for, and also Damayanti.store. And also my show archive is there, my blog, and sign up for my newsletter so that you can keep in touch with latest updates. And to finish off, some Sanskrit, some beautiful fine sounds of Sanskrit. And today I'm going to sing the perfect prayer. It's the invocation to the Isha Upanishad. That is perfect. This is perfect. From the perfect comes the perfect. And verily the perfect remains. May peace and peace and peace be everywhere. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you for spending time with me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. To find out more about Damayanti, or to get my book, Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, or to purchase my range of beautiful spiritual jewelry, go to my website, damayanti.store. That's damayanti.store. See you next time.